Hello, my name's Steve Porcaro, and today I'm interviewing Guy Blais, who is going to share his experience after joining the Army in 1948. He's the oldest decorated veteran of all wars in Windsor. He's served in the Korean War from 1951 to 1952. He enlisted at age 17 back in 1948. And 1948 was the first year that the U.S. military was fully integrated with blacks by President Harry Truman. It was an interesting time. It was the beginning of the integration of all the services. And one of the things that Guy does now is a frequent contributor to newspapers with editorial letters promoting peace from a veteran standpoint, and he's the oldest member of the Connecticut Veterans for Peace. So right now, I'd like to take a few minutes and really hear some of the highlights, things that Guy went through. We're going to talk about why he enlisted at 17, what was he thinking, what was going on from his perspective in Windsor at that time, and more importantly, what's his message after all this time that he would like to share with us. Guy, welcome, and thank you for your service. We talked a moment ago, my father-in-law was in Korea after that time. You might have bumped into him, you never know. Harry Tate, small world. But if we go back to 1948, it was right after the end of World War II, you were 17. What were you thinking? What brought you into the Army at that time?
Well, the basic reason is that I was looking for a job. My father was a tyrant, pretty much at home, and I grew up in real poverty. You know, I spent half a dozen years in a home with no electricity, so there was no radio, no phone, no car. So for me, after my sophomore year in high school, joining the Army was a way to get a job and to get some money, because my father didn't believe in education, and he wanted the kids out working. And he did have a hard time. We had 9 kids, so
Wow.
I was number 3. And so we had a local Army recruiting station. I went in, and they give you quite a few tests when you sign up. And I passed all the tests, I guess, and there were a couple other people that joined at the same time. So I was put in charge of them to get them to basic training in New Jersey. So New Jersey was typical 8 weeks of basic training. And after basic training, the Army didn't want me to be a regular grunt, so they sent me to clerk typist school.
Oh, okay.
And that was 8 weeks also. And my first assignment was in Trieste, Italy.
Wow.
And Trieste was where the Eastern and Western Front met at the end of World War II, and it became a UN free territory. And there was 5,000 each of American, British, and Russian troops there. And Trieste was a good assignment. The weather is beautiful in Trieste. It's a seaport. And my first job was with the commanding general in his office. And this was before computers, so every office had a couple typists. And I was sitting behind the fastest typist in the Army.
Wow.
Which was embarrassing. And because for the generals, we could not erase a mistake. Everything had to be perfect, you know. And it was funny because my coworker there was he really was an alcoholic. As soon as he got out of work, he'd get south. But somehow he'd come in the morning and he'd just sit down and do his job.
Well, was he 17 as well, or?
No, he was about 10 years older. No.
All right, he was still a young man, so you can do that when you're young, right?
I don't know. But, and there was an office manager, and the general would come in the morning. This was in Miramar Castle, which is the famous tourist place now. It's like a museum. They had
Wow.
beautiful grounds and sculptures throughout the building. And the general would come in and he'd look at the staff. He'd just go in his office and he'd call the manager and give him his order. And I wasn't crazy about the office. That's my first experience where, the officers don't talk to the enlisted man.
Wow.
At least that was my case.
Right.
And after about 5 or 6 months there, they passed out a memo telling people they could try out for the baseball team. In the Army then, there were 2 sports you could get to be on detached duty. That was baseball and boxing. So they allowed me to go out for the baseball team. They didn't think I would make the team. So I made the team, so they told me, well, you can't be playing baseball and be working in the office. We need someone full time. So baseball would require, every afternoon would be for baseball, and the morning would be for office or training with the troop. So they gave me my choice. I could play baseball and go in the infantry or stay in the office. And I said, I'll take the infantry.
Wow. All right. So what position did you play?
I pitched.
Okay. So
Yeah.
good.
I was fortunate. I guess I had good gene for sports. I was first string pitcher in high school my sophomore year. So in the Army, I became the first string pitcher on the baseball team. So every morning we would play baseball and a weekend. And every afternoon. In the morning we would train with the troops. And with the infantry, it's like a next step up from basic training. It's still do a lot of marching.
Oh, yeah.
But you get to fire more weapons. And I was pretty good at weapons. I was expert with every weapon.
Right.
And I believe I was the only person in the company to be in that category.
Wow.
And one reason is I could throw a grenade. And to score expert in a grenade, that was the hardest thing to do because the first throw you had to throw in the big hole about 15 feet in front of you. And then there's about 4 throws, and each throw was a lot harder.
Wow.
The second throw they had a barn with a door at the top, a small door, and you had to throw the grenade through that door.
Wow.
And I'm the only person who did that.
Well, you were an expert pitcher.
Yeah, that was one reason. Because
That was
and
great.
I didn't throw the grenade the way the Army tells you to throw it. I threw it just like a baseball.
Yeah, yeah.
They ask you to throw it. Anyways, so the problem with playing baseball is the NCOs in the company, in the platoon I was assigned to, they don't like that because you get exempt from all extra duties when you're on the baseball team. So they don't like that because they can't give you a KP or stuff like that. So after the baseball season, they loaded me up with all this extra duty to make up for it.
Wow, that was awfully nice of them to
Yeah.
remember you.
So I said, to hell with that. I'm going out for the boxing team. Because as a kid, when I was 10-year-old, I actually fought in a professional boxing ring.
Wow.
This is when boxing was the major sport
Right.
in both the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
So I was 10 years old and I was fighting in the ring.
Wow.
And also, I lived in an English neighborhood. My language at home was French. So in those years, the French and English didn't like each other. And that goes back to the war in Canada, where the final war there was between the French and English
Right.
for who would colonize the country. And it was the most famous battle in North America, probably, in Quebec. Both generals died in that war.
On the field, I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
on
My
the
wife
field.
and I visited that battleground. I
General
remember.
Wolfe and Montcalm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's unlike the Army now. Like the military, one thing I don't like about the decoration the generals wear, I spent more time on the front line than all those generals that have rows on ribbon, because they don't get, all those ribbons are campaign ribbon. And the higher up in the military, like if you're a general, you have 3 regiments under you, each separate battle or campaign that these regiments go through, they make up a medal for it. So if 3 regiments, they each have one separate battle or that they get ribbons for. The general gets 3.
Wow.
He gets one for, he gets all the medal that the individual regiment get. Even though they might be like MacArthur was 1,000 miles away in Tokyo during the Korean War.
I know. So, not because we only have a limited amount of time. So, how long were you in Italy, and how did you end up going to Korea from Italy? Did you go there?
Yeah. Well, after baseball, I went out to boxing, made boxing. After the boxing season, I was about to do, after a couple of years, I was due to, I'd signed up for 3 years. And the only person that talked to me when I left was the person in charge, colonel in charge of my the outfit I was in. And he didn't want me to leave because I was his key. You know, the top officers, they like to have good athletic teams so they can brag about it. So I said no. He says, I want to go home. So I get back in New Jersey and I turn in my clothes. And it was one day from getting out and I got the Harry Truman 1-year extension.
Wow.
Because the war in Korea had broken out and they were looking for troops. So I went home for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and they sent me to Fort Wiley to get further instruction on my career. And I hitchhiked to Fort Wiley, and then they sent me to the West Coast to take a boat to go to.
Can I ask a question? So, at this point, were you assigned to an infantry unit?
I wasn't assigned to anybody for a while. When I got to where the boat was in Seattle, I think that's when I was assigned to. I'm not sure.
So you were unattached at the moment.
I was completely. I hitchhiked from Kansas to Seattle.
That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, so I got there in time, and we got on it was a troop ship. We got on a troop ship, and the ride was quite different from the. It was so peaceful compared to the Atlantic. You know, the Pacific is so smooth. And the Army had this big base in Hokkaido, Japan. And I was there for a week or two. And then I was assigned to the 45th Division,
Okay.
which was the first National Guard outfit
Okay.
to go to Korea. And because I played sport, that's one disadvantage, the NCOs never put you in for promotion. So after 3 years, I was still of the PFC.
Wow. Wow.
And so we take a boat, and this is an old boat, very slow boat. I was surprised how long it took to get to Korea. We went to Busan, a major boat place. And we get off the ship and get assigned to, we replaced the 1st Cavalry Division, which was they'd taken a lot of casualties and they were leaving. And going up this mountain, all the, North Korea is a very mountainous area. And so what I still remember is I've been in the military 3 years, but if you've never been on the front line and where you see the dead bodies, I really don't know what it is. So we're walking up the mountain to position, and the troops, they're leaving, we're passing them on the way up, they're going down. And they're full of all these dark jokes. They're telling us, how we got these beautiful Korean girls up there. And those of us going up, nobody's saying a word because we had no idea.
This is your first time going into a battle situation at that point.
Yeah. And so it was dark when we got there, it was probably around midnight. So every position in Korea, it was these long trenches, and they're all two-man positions. So I could, and every position had to be manned 24 hours a day, and we never had a day off. So for about 6 months, I was on duty 24 hours a day with no time off.
What time of year, what season was it, Guy? Do you remember?
I got there in the fall, and I spent all winter there. And
So you know how cold it was. Do you remember?
I got 50 degrees below zero.
Yeah.
And it was criminal sending us in Korea without winter clothing. I was lucky because I grew up in Vermont, right near the Canadian border, where it's the coldest area in the country. And I knew what below zero weather could do. It can kill you. And there were a lot of soldiers died from frostbite in Korea. The biggest battle in Korea, which was at the Chowan Reservoir, a lot of soldiers died of frostbite. And that was one of the first areas where the Chinese really started sending in a lot of troops. And the Chinese were great fighters, And I thought they were better than Americans, in a sense, because when you consider they fought the U.S. to stand still with zero Air Force. And where I was, every day, unless it was a very bad day, you could see the U.S. planes attacking the Chinese position, And we kind of envied the Air Force because they would come there, the first run over the Chinese position, they'd drop a bomb, do a circle, then they'd shoot their rocket, do another circle, then they'd use their machine gun, then they'd go back home to a nice bed. We slept on the trench, we used a parka to prevent moisture. We slept on top of our parka. And the sleeping bag is what saved our lives because the sleep bag can really keep you warm. You know?
I can imagine.
So we would zip completely up, you know, and that was the worst thing. It was so cold, you know. And we had it. The company commander was an idiot, and the first day, you know, like we get up in the morning, and we look out, and dead bodies, you know. And I think it's the South Korean. South Korean were mostly helped us with KP stuff and bring in ammo and stuff. They had buried a Chinese soldier with a foot sticking out in the air, only about 6 feet away from where we were. So, but the company commander, in the middle of the day, we could see this. You know, we were on a row of mountain. And the Chinese military was on, there's a big rice field in the middle, and the Chinese were on the top on the road mountain in front of us. And we could shot artillery with each other. And the U.S. had, I think in all wars, we have more bombs and weapons. We're not short, you know, we have all the ammunition that we can use. And so this big fat general, not general, captain, company commander, captain, gets up there with field glasses and he's looking out there. And he decides to send a full squad out in the middle of the day to reconnoiter. And it was so stupid. Right away, I knew it was stupid. We could see the soldiers. These mountains were pretty steep. They go down the mountain, they get halfway through these rice fields, and they have to walk on these elevation pathways. And the Chinese had, a lot of these places, they had set up concentration points. I don't know if you know it. Concentration point is the artillery or motors, if they want to hit a place, they practice ahead of time.
Predetermined range.
Yeah, and then they keep a record of the elevation and windage. So the very first shot, they can hit the target. So because of these walkways, they had targets on these things. So they waited till the squad got there, and they wiped out everybody in 5-10 minutes. You know, we could see. So this was right after lunch. So the platoon sergeant comes by a couple of hours later, wants volunteers to go down and see if anybody's alive. I think most people, I thought that too, is that it was my first day there. Especially after seeing the dead bodies. I didn't think I would survive. So I volunteered. Nobody else volunteered. And one brave medic went down with me. So as soon as it got dark, we go down there. And both sides are shooting flares and mortars, which I didn't like because I didn't want the Chinese to see me.
So was this during the day you went down or in the evening?
No, the minute it got dark.
Yeah.
I didn't. Well, you couldn't go there during the day because we just saw it.
Right.
They had that place they were in. And what most soldiers, one reason nobody wanted to go down is they thought that the same thing would happen. They'd be looking for possible rescue operation. So I'm going down there, and we're spending half the time on our bellies because every time a flare would go off, I'd hit the ground, and I told the medic to follow me, do the same thing. And in my mind, I kind of guessed exactly where I would find the troop, and well, I didn't find everybody, but probably about half the squad I was able to find, and we found one survivor, and he was bleeding and near death probably, and the medic patched him up quickly, and I carried a lot of extra ammo, and the medic carried the stretchers, so we put him on a stretcher and carried him back up, and for my size, I was very strong, so I carried the bottom end of the stretcher, which is the hardest thing I ever did in my life. So we got back up to the hill, dropped him off, and nobody ever came to me and say thank you. Most soldiers, typically, you would get Silver Star for that. And I think what happened is that the captain realized he'd been so stupid that he didn't want to give out any high decoration because he thought that would have made what he did public,
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can figure out.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be the first or the last time that something like that has happened.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that get overlooked.
Yeah. So every day was pretty much the same. Again, all the two-man position in the trenches. And at night, we'd have 2 on and 2 off. And they gave us these night goggles, which I never used. Those early things were so bad. They're not like the modern what they have now. They were terrible. And to me, they would impede. They'd be worse than nothing. So, yeah, and for lunch, we'd go just behind the hill, where the officers stayed. There's no officers on the front line that live on the front line and sleep on the front. There's no officer. As a matter of fact, my platoon leader, and the platoon leader, in the infantry, there's 4 squad. They're about 12 men each, so he's 50 men. In the half year I was there, he never came once to my trench. I never talked to my platoon leader or to any officer. I never saw an officer in the front line where I was. And they were back while we were freezing. They had, the South Koreans built little huts for them. They were heated. We weren't allowed to make fire because they claimed that the Chinese would see the smoke and see our position. They knew where we were, but they had these stupid rules, And for lunch, we would get up, one of us, just behind the top of the hill, and they had a kitchen there, and then we'd go back. So there's so much bombing where we were. I think some people called it old ball. There was so much artillery and bombs. It was a forested area, but all the trees had been cut down.
Wow.
Yeah. There was only one that's funny. There was one big tree that had a half a limb left, a portion of it, but everything, so it was on. So, because I was only extended for a year, and it'd take me 2 or 3 months to get there, or I got my orders to get back home. So I made it back home, and I've never been to a reunion, Army reunion, because everybody in my squad that I was there originally was killed.
Wow. I can only imagine.
So each day of my life, I think about all these soldiers. And this is why I've been anti-war, because I was lucky to come back, but 35,000 soldiers died in Korea. And now we have there's only one person that's anti-war in all of Congress, and he's a libertarian. It used to be that, like I was a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard. She spent time, she was anti-war. But she quit the Democratic Party because according to her, when she first signed up, when she was very young, the Democrats were more like the party of more apt to be anti-war. But now there was no difference in both parties of pro-war.
It's an interesting to see the pendulum swing when we look at the anti-war movement. What makes one anti-war? Most people who've served, most veterans don't want war, don't want to go back to that.
No, but I don't agree that most veterans are anti-war. I find the reverse.
You think so?
My experience, yeah.
Yeah.
Except for people who are in the Veterans for Peace, because I remember when I was in Vermont, Newport, Vermont, they had a Legion club there in the Veterans for Peace, and I was the first person back from Korea, and they wanted me to join, so I go in this Veteran Foreign War place. And I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't a drinker. I was a very good athlete. I played some, semi-pro baseball, so although there's a few people there, it's like they were all alcoholic. And there's no intelligent conversation about anything. The first day, going back home, this guy wants to ride home. And he was sousing. And it turns out he was carrying a revolver. And right in the middle of the city where I lived in Newport, Vermont, he opens the window, he's flying his revolver out the door.
Well, Guy, you know this better than most. Many people who've been in these wartime settings are dealing with post-traumatic stress, who've been through situations, and people are dealing with it different ways. Some people didn't get help or weren't prepared to ask for help, and they were trying to deal with it on their own.
Yeah, I had a few people kept telling me, I didn't do that for years, that they thought I needed treatment for PTSD. So I finally went to the VA in Norrington, and I went for a few sessions. I didn't find it helpful. And that's the thing about war. War is they're the worst kind of terrorism there is. And why do all these politicians support war? They claim they don't, but they all vote for all these war bills, all these war expenditures. And it's criminal what we could do with what the money we spent for war. We could get rid of poverty in the whole country. We could send everybody in college, free college. And Yeah, that was one reason I joined the Army was my parents had no money, and I thought I was smart enough to go to college. And they couldn't give me a buck. So I joined, one reason was I thought that everybody that joins in the Army gets VA benefits for college.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I thought it was only the people who were in combat that got these benefits. But even if you're on duty in the U.S. for a month, you get the same benefit as a combat soldier. So there's no difference. So I didn't need to. Because when I first got the assignment to go to Korea, when I got back, I thought it was like Superman. I was so good with all the weapons and with athletic. I was the champion boxer in 3S. I wasn't scared, but it was more like I wanted to go to college. And I never got beyond the PFCs. I never made more than $75 a month. So to me, a career was a chance to. It would send me to college, and that was one reason I wasn't that unhappy about being assigned there. But of course, you know nothing about war. Even if you've been in the Army, most people have been in the Army 20 years, have never been in war. Because most troops are supporting troops, or one reason or other. They really don't get involved. I mean, they're not in the front line.
Right.
And people like officers, they're 1,000 miles behind the front line. They claim they're in the front line. But us infantry grunts, the only people in the front line are people who sleep on the front line. And we're the first place the enemy would come to, it would be where we are.
You are the tip of the spear, and it does take a lot of people to support that. And it is interesting. Yes, we've had times of peace, moments of peace, and at the same time, I think, like a lot of things, I don't know how many people want to go to war as much as protect our country. How do we balance that? How do we want peace. How do other people want peace?
Well, throughout the whole world, I majored in propaganda. Throughout the whole war, people don't want to go to war. But there are people who profit from war. So what the people who profit from war do, they do these propaganda pre-war campaigns. So I can tell you the propaganda that paved the way to every war we've been in. So like, I don't know if you remember the elaborate propaganda war they had in the war against Iraq where, well, the two war where the one was about the baby killing,
Yep.
which was completely fabricated.
Yep.
And the other one was about the weapon mass destruction.
Mass destruction.
So
yeah.
most of those war, especially the baby killing story, the whole thing was orchestrated by a PR firm in Washington with 3 fake witnesses that appeared before Congress claiming that they were in Kuwait when Saddam invaded. And it was completely made up. It was televised by all major networks. And before this televised event, propaganda, they were taking a lot of polls. Every week, they would show the majority of Americans did not agree on going to war against Iraq. After that big show they put on for these 3 days, they even fooled Amnesty International. Amnesty International actually printed a book detailing what these 3 witnesses said. And maybe because I studied propaganda, I never believed the stories. I never believed it. But they believed, they printed a book on it. And President Bush had this book reproduced and sent to every college in the country. So after the hearing and after this, so it completely changed, not for all people, but it changed the number of people who wanted to go to war from a minus to a plus. And it did the same thing with the politician in Washington. So it shows you the power of propaganda.
All right, so because of time, let's end it on that note, right? Think about listening to objective people share their thoughts. Think about where is the source of this information coming from, and then talk to people who've been there. You've been there. You've been on both sides of this equation. You've been on the front line. You've been on the back lines. And there is a wide range of issues, without a doubt. I think information is important. I don't know who to trust, whether it's the news, the internet, because when I listen to other people, other countries and other people, they think they're right as well. So it is a hard message going forward, you know. Trust in, what's that saying? Love all, trust none.
Trust but verify.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, Guy, again, this was Guy Blais sharing some of his experiences from the Korean War. Also, we could spend all day, but because of time, we're going to end it here, and we may have Guy back someday to share other ideas that he has. So thank you for joining us, Guy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story.